Jim Bunning's plaque in the Hall of Fame is somewhat unusual. He spent the majority of his career, 9 seasons, in Detroit, where he won 119 games and posted a winning percentage of .576. His ERA with Detroit was a respectable .345.
And he struck out over 1,400 batters.
In fact, 5 of his 9 All-Star appearances, there were 2 All-Star games in 1961, came while he played for the Tigers. But Bunning is displayed in his Hall of Fame plaque wearing a Phillies cap. Bunning spent 6 seasons in Philadelphia, winning 89 games and posting a winning percentage of .546. But his ERA was significantly lower in Philadelphia at .293. He also pitched 23 shutouts in Philadelphia compared to 16 while with Detroit. His strikeouts per 9 innings was slightly higher in Philadelphia at 7.1 compared to 6.8 with Detroit, and his walks plus hits per inning pitched was slightly better in Philadelphia at 1.111 compared to 1.208 in Detroit. Contrary to popular belief, the cap that a player wears when he is enshrined in Cooperstown is not left entirely up to the player. The player is, of course, consulted, but final say belongs to the Hall of Fame's senior staff and research team. Hall of Fame President Idelson says that the Hall tries to capture the team for whom the player made his most indelible mark. In some instances, the Hall has overruled the player's stated desires. Garry Carter, for example, wanted to go into the Hall of Fame as a New York Met. Some players and managers who have had significant roles with 2 or more teams have actually gone into the Hall of Fame with no logo on their cap. This includes Roy Halladay, Greg Maddux, and Tony LaRussa, all of whom sport no logo on their cap on their Hall of Fame plaque. But Jim Bunning, even though he spent 9 seasons with Detroit, made his most significant contribution to baseball while he was playing with Philadelphia. And that contribution is fairly obvious to all Phillies fans. For that, you would have to travel back in time to Father's Day, June 21st, 1964. On that day, the Phillies were slated to play a doubleheader against the New York Mets at Shea Stadium. Jim Bunning was on the mound for the first game of that twin bill, and what he accomplished that day earned him a warm spot in the hearts of all Philadelphia Phillies fans for eternity.
Welcome to Philadelphia Baseball History. On this channel, we talk about the history of baseball from the A's to the Phillies to the 19th century. And sometimes we talk about contemporary baseball issues. So if you love baseball and if you love Philadelphia, stick around and subscribe to our channel.
Born in Southgate, Kentucky, right across the river from Cincinnati, James Paul David Bunning grew up a Cincinnati Reds fan. He had such heroes as Paul Derringer and Bucky Walters. Bunning went to high school in Cincinnati. However, he did not make the baseball team until his sophomore year. He played football and basketball in his freshman year. He made the varsity baseball team as a sophomore and then played for 3 years. Bunning signed with the Detroit Tigers while he was attending Xavier University. His parents wanted Jim to finish college, and so the Tigers agreed to allow him to skip spring training for the last 3 years of his education. He began playing at the Class D level, a level that no longer exists in modern baseball, with the team in Richmond, Indiana. Jim used the $4,000 signing bonus to buy an engagement ring for his childhood sweetheart, Mary. Jim and Mary would have 9 children. But signing with the Tigers meant that Bunning lost his basketball scholarship. His parents decided to pick up the tab for his final 3 years, and he earned a bachelor's degree in economics. A sidearm thrower, Jim Bunning broke into the majors in 1955. In 51 innings pitched, the 23-year-old posted an ERA of 6.35. By 1957, however, Bunning had improved remarkably. Bunning was the starting pitcher for the 1957 All-Star Game, and by mid-season he had amassed 10 wins and an ERA of 2.03. He was the winning pitcher in the 6-5 American League victory, having shut down the likes of Hank Aaron, Stan Musial, Willie Mays, and Frank Robinson in 3 innings of shutout baseball. Jim Bunning went on to win 20 games that year with an ERA of 2.69. But he lost out on the Cy Young Award to Warren Spahn of the Milwaukee Braves, who won 21 games while also posting a 2.69 ERA. In those days, one Cy Young Award was given for the entire major leagues, instead of one each for the American and National League. Interestingly, Bunning didn't even come in second place in the Cy Young voting. That honor went to Dick Donovan, a 16-game winner for the White Sox. Bunning pitched solidly for a Detroit Tigers team that mostly teetered between the first and second division. The highest the Tigers rose during Bunning's tenure was to second place, and that was in 1961. In December of 1963, the Tigers traded Bunning to the Philadelphia Phillies. And so, he was set to begin the 1964 season with his new team in Philadelphia. Now, I wasn't born yet in 1964, and with my father finishing out his last year with the Marine Corps, my parents weren't even married until the next year. So I can only imagine how magical the 1964 season must have seemed to Philadelphia Phillies fans at the time. With rookie Dick Allen at third base and slugger Johnny Callison in right field, the Phillies jumped out to a 9-2 record in the month of April. By the end of the month of May, the Phillies had cooled down just a bit, but they had a record of 25-15, and they were a half game in front of the San Francisco Giants for first place in the National League. By June 20th, the Phillies were a full game and a half ahead of the Giants in what was a very close pennant race. Dick Allen was batting .295 and had launched 13 home runs so far in the season. Johnny Callison was batting .300 with 8 dingers. June 21st was the second doubleheader that the Phillies had played against the New York Mets in 3 days. Bunning, of course, was slated to pitch that first game. He had last been used by the team for 2/3 of an inning in Chicago 3 days earlier on June 18th. Reliever Ed Roebuck had given up a home run to the Cubs hitter Ron Santo in the bottom of the 9th. Ernie Banks then hit a single off Roebuck, and after a pop fly, Roebuck walked Len Gabrielson. With 2 men on, 1 out, and nursing a 3-run lead, Jim Bunning was called in for relief. Bunning got the next 2 batters to ground out and preserved the Phillies' victory. He is credited with a save for that game. And when the dust had settled, Bunning's record was 6-2 with a 2.26 ERA. June 21st was Father's Day, which was described in New York as being beautiful but hot, with temperatures reaching the upper 90s. The 32-year-old Bunning faced Tracy Stallard, who had just beaten the Phillies 9 days earlier in Connie Mack Stadium in Philadelphia. In the top of the first inning, rookie Johnny Briggs worked a leadoff walk. He was moved to second with a sacrifice bunt. Dick Allen came to the plate and drove Briggs home with an RBI single. Little did everyone know that that would be the only offense that the Phillies needed to win that game. But it wasn't the only run that they scored. The Phillies gave their sidearm starter good run support as they scored a total of 6 runs that game. Johnny Callison would hit his 9th home run that day. Even Jim Bunning would contribute with a 2 RBI double in the top of the 6th inning. But while the Phillies were lighting up the scoreboard, the Mets offense was particularly anemic. Bunning's pitching was just superb. He threw a total of 90 pitches that day, and of those pitches, 69 were strikes. In the 8th inning, after Hawk Taylor was called out on strikes, he told the media, "You know, umpires give it to them in that situation." But home plate umpire Ed Sudal said of the pitch that tripped up Taylor, it was a beautiful pitch, a beautiful curve on the outside of the plate. Bunning later told the media, "My slider was my best pitch, and I had a pretty good curveball." The only Mets batter who came close to getting on first base was Jesse Gonder in the 5th inning. Gonder hit a line drive close to second baseman Tony Taylor. Taylor dove and knocked the ball down. He then recovered, grabbed the ball, and threw it in first in time to force out Gonder. Even the New York Mets fans knew and appreciated what they were witnessing. By the 8th inning, the fans were cheering when their own Mets team were rung up on strikeouts. When Jim Bunning came to bat in the top of the 9th inning, the Mets fans went wild with appreciation. On the bench, Johnny Callison described Bunning's behavior as the strangest thing. You see, baseball players are a superstitious lot. And superstition holds that when you're in the middle of pitching a no-hitter, you don't talk about it. But Bunning began to talk about his no-hitter in the 5th inning. He was coaxing his teammates to dive for the balls and make sure they get those last few outs. In the 9th inning, Charlie Smith began the inning with a pop fly to shortstop Bobby Wine. Mets fans booed when George Atkinson was announced as a pinch hitter. But that didn't matter. Atkinson struck out on 3 pitches. With pinch hitter John Stevenson at the plate, Bunning pitched to a count of 2 balls and 2 strikes. And on the last pitch of the game, Stevenson struck out swinging. It was Bunning's 10th strikeout of the day. When all was said and done, Jim Bunning had pitched the 7th perfect game in Major League history, as no Met had reached base, even on a walk or an error. It was the first perfect game in National League history since 1880. And Bunning never threw more than 13 pitches in a single inning. In the next game of that doubleheader, a little-known rookie made his debut on the mound. His name was Rick Wise. Wise would win that second game, allowing the Phillies to sweep the doubleheader. Wise would also be the next Philly to throw a no-hitter, this time occurring on June 23, 1971. The Phillies rode high for the rest of the 1964 season. Well, that is, until they reached the last 12 games of the season. Phillies fans all know what happened next. But at least for most of the season, Phillies fans could savor the magical year that was 1964.
Show your hometown pride. Philadelphia baseball history merchandise, t-shirts, phone cases, masks, notebooks, mugs, and more. Check out the exclusive designs in our merch store and celebrate your favorite Philadelphia-based team. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you have any ideas for topics that we can cover in the future, please let us know in the comments below. If you would like to see more of these videos, please consider becoming a patron through Patreon. Again, we'll have a link in the description box below.